Welcome to Cat's Got Your Tongue. This is the podcast for cat lovers in association with the charity Cats Protection. My name's Adam Brown. I'm your host, and I'm a very proud cat dad to my beautiful cat/child, Cinnamon, who's an amazing calico queen. Now, in each episode, we chat to celebrity guests. We hear all about the cats in their lives and exactly why they love them so much. This is Cat's Got Your Tongue. So each week on Cat's Got Your Tongue, I'm normally joined by a cat-owning guest to talk about life with their pet and also learn a little bit more about cats myself. But on this episode of Cat's Got Your Tongue, it's going to be a little bit different. So our special guest isn't a cat owner, but she is here to discuss an issue which definitely affects all of us cat owners. She's a big animal fan, a zoologist, photographer, wildlife campaigner, and a presenter on BBC programmes like Spring Watch and Winter Watch. It's Megan McCubbin. Hiya, Megan, you all right?
Hello, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really, really good. I'm excited to talk all things cat as usual. So, this is the place to do it. Obviously, something which you want to kind of bring up today on Cat's Got Your Tongue is related to something which we get a lot of messages about from listeners to this podcast who often ask about their cat's predatory behaviour, which, again, is something we are going to touch on in a bit more detail. And when you think about it, everyone loves wildlife in the gardens and, in the communities. And no one really likes to think that their cat might be damaging it in any way or could be a danger to wildlife. But we do know that hunting can be part of a cat's natural behaviour. So as responsible cat owners, the question always is, what do we do? Now, joining us to discuss this further with Megan is Jeff Knott, Cats Protection's Director of Advocacy and Influence. Jeff's also a conservationist and a cat owner himself. Jeff, thanks for joining us today. How are you, mate?
I'm good, Adam. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really, really good. Again, as I said to Megan, as always, any chance for me to talk about cats is a great day for me. So I'm super excited to have you both here. So you guys have met before and you are friends before we, I just want to establish that. You might have different views and opinions on certain things, but you have discussed this before, haven't you?
Yeah, we have done. We both got invited onto a radio show to discuss responsible cat ownership relatively recently. And of course, Jeff used to work for the RSPB, so we both got kind of connections there as well.
Yeah, it would be good to, have a chat about balancing the behaviour of our cats and the needs of wildlife and sort of really getting into that in a bit more detail. I suppose a good place to start would be, because it's not something I've ever considered as a cat owner, to be honest. Like, Megan, I'm going to come to you first on it. Like, what do you think our cats are doing that we should be concerned about? Maybe it's something which a lot of cat owners do overlook.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, cats have this natural instinct. It's not their fault. They have been domesticated 9,000 years ago. They still have those kind of wild predatory instincts. And when we let them out into the garden to free roam, they can have, it depends on the radius around your house and how far they're traveling, but they can have as much of an impact as 3 times a predator of the same size. So they go out every day and kill up to 2,000 species globally. Their hunting is, it's quite extraordinary. They catch many different small birds, rodents and things like that. And just because they don't bring it back into the home as a present, as we like to dress it up as sometimes, doesn't mean they're not doing it. So a lot of the time, a lot of the hunting that goes on is hunting that you won't see and you won't be aware of. So when people say, oh, my cat doesn't go hunting, it never happens, unfortunately, there's just no way of really telling that. And the likelihood is, unfortunately, that instinct is going kind of taking hold at some point. But we love our cats. I rescued a cat once, a stray cat, when I was at university in Liverpool. She had 3 kittens. I had to hide her in my wardrobe with the kittens every time a landlord came around. And I rehomed all the cats to people around me. And I'm not a hater of cats. I don't like the impact that they have by any means, and I think there's ways around it. If we let our dogs free roam in the way that we let our cats free roam, then we'd be having this conversation about dogs, and we are having this conversation about dogs, being let off lead in sensitive areas and things like that. So I think it's about how we manage cats and how we kind of can look after them so they have the best welfare possible, but we're also protecting wildlife, because we're in the midst of a biodiversity crisis. And yes, climate change is really critical there, and we're losing populations because of bigger issues, arguably. But if we can take the impact and the strain off of cat predation to help these species at a time when they most need it in the face of climate change, then why wouldn't we?
Yeah, I totally understand your point. And again, it's probably something which I've never really considered. Jeff, like, does that make sense to you, or how can you kind of come back against that? I mean, the valid points, aren't they? It's factually correct.
100% valid point, Adam. And, as Megan's already mentioned, I've got a bit of a foot in both camps. So I spent 16 years working in nature conservation, and now I'm very pleased to be at Cats Protection working on cat welfare. But what we're dealing with is two really, really important issues here. I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast, I don't need to say why cat welfare is an incredibly important issue, but we are also in a nature and climate crisis. The UK has lost more nature than almost any other country in the world. So it's a really, really important issue to make sure we do everything we can to look after our threatened species as well. Now, as Megan's already said, there are lots of big factors affecting our wildlife which are driving the declines, things like climate change, intensive land use, and the like, a range of big pressures. Cat predation is not the main factor driving the loss of nature in the UK. However, as Megan absolutely rightly says, if there are things we can do to help redirect, manage that natural predatory behaviour of cats to reduce the impact on threatened species, then of course we could do it. And, Adam, you've already said yourself, I'm sure the vast majority of cat owners would want to do that as well. I meet almost no cat owners that enjoy their cats killing things. So it's one of those things where I think there's lots we can do to work together, and hopefully this kind of conversation will help a few more cat owners think about it and what we can do.
So, I mean, that kind of leads me quite nicely, Jeff. Like, obviously, the points you've raised there, Megan, what's the solution in terms of, if it's a natural behaviour for a cat, is it not in some ways a little bit unfair to stop that behaviour?
Well, you could say the same about dogs, couldn't you? They have natural hunting behaviours. Wolves hunt in packs, they roam over large distances, but we've domesticated them in such a way where actually they're not allowed to go out hunting. If dogs were doing the same thing, it would be, which they are, we get cases where, dogs kill swans every year and it makes the news. Cats kill things, it doesn't make the news. And then we argue, well, it's about their welfare as well. And it is about their welfare, of course it is, but there are ways of mitigating it. And I know many, many cat owners who do it effortlessly and responsibly, and and I love their cats. I've looked after them. A friend of mine called Kirsty, she lives in a national park in Scotland. She's got a beautiful little black cat called Midna, very sweet, and ever since Midna was a kitten, she's kind of created this cattery outside, and Midna gets to spend a few hours every day outside, gets all of that enrichment, that fresh air, but she is restricted in terms of the area that she can roam, and she hasn't killed any wildlife, or certainly none that has been outside of the pen. If there's been a mouse or something that's gone into the pen, I'm not entirely sure, but obviously you can't control what goes into those environments, but you certainly can control what way your cat is free roaming. Midna spends time outside, she goes inside, she's very happy inside a lot of the time, so I'm more of an advocate for kind of these cat pens on the outside if you can attach them to your shed. Obviously you can say to people, put on a bell on your cat, and that can be helpful for some cats that want to wear a collar. There are many cats that will just scratch off, use their paws, and you put a collar on and the next day it will come back without a collar and who knows where it's gone. So yeah, I mean the bell doesn't really effectively work for most cats, in my experience. And obviously do it in a certain season where there's no, not breeding birds or anything, and be sensitive of the areas you're taking any pet to, not just cats, your dogs as well. And yeah, I think we can lean more into inside cats in kind of cat pens outside. I don't know what the official term is, Jeff, you'll have to correct me. But these pens that you can build in your garden if you're lucky enough to have one. But we should be thinking more carefully about it, absolutely.
I think they're called catios, Megan. It's kind of the official name for them, which is an awful pun. Yeah, and you're right. There are differences. Clearly, to state the obvious, dogs and cats are very different animals. So the particular solutions for both are likely to be different. For example, one of the key things with cats we always find is choice from a cat welfare experiment. So some things like catios work really well with some cats, and others just won't take to it at all. The trend for sort of taking cats for walks on leads and sort of putting them in backpacks is actually quite concerning from a cat welfare perspective. So that's not one we'd be keen to promote at all. But you're absolutely right. it's those kind of trade-offs where we can maximize the choice and the value for any animal welfare, whether it's a cat or a dog, while protecting wildlife. And we've done some work before around East Anglia and the coast with ground nesting birds and the disturbance of people letting dogs on leads and causing all sorts of issues for things like little terns. I think one of the things for pet owners of all sorts is being aware what nature is around them. So knowing if there are people who are often surprised that birds nest on the ground at all. So being aware of that and making sure then that whether it's keeping a dog on a lead, keeping a cat in at that very sort of sensitive time of birds nesting is a really helpful thing to do. But you're right, for people that don't want to build a catio, or they don't think that would work for their pet, there's a bunch of much more simple things that cat owners can do as well. Things like keeping cats in at dawn and dusk, which is where most wildlife is most active, so they're most at risk. A bell on a well-fitted collar, you said, Megan, it won't work for all cats, but it might work for some. And actually playing with cats as well, that can help redirect some of that natural hunting energy and give them that dopamine kick that they get with hunting in a much more enjoyable way, which obviously has much less risk for our native wildlife.
Just playing devil's advocate a little bit here, Jeff, and just picking up on something that Megan said about, the comparison between dogs and cats. And I get they are different animals and, completely different kind of qualities in a lot of ways and different traits and all the rest of it. But do you think in some ways that there could potentially be the need for a slight cultural shift in the way that we view dogs and we view cats? Because I feel like there's varying shades of grey when it comes to cat ownership. And like my cat's an indoor cat. Like, she doesn't go out at all. So obviously for her natural sort of hunting instincts, I do a lot more play and a lot more, make sure there's a lot of the stimulation, that kind of thing. But obviously with dogs, it's like dog owners, you take your dog for a walk, a couple of times a day. And that's kind of the agreed way that all dog owners own their dogs, you know what I mean? So with cats, there's no one size fits all for it. So do you feel like we might eventually get towards that stage where we see more people want to keep their cats indoors? Or, I mean, again, it's a really difficult thing to do, and I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer in this, but do you think it's almost a cultural thing in some ways?
It's a really interesting question, Adam. I don't know the answer particularly. I think it's more around the right solution for the right cat and the right cat owner in the right circumstance. So actually, if you live in a national park, then absolutely, there's much more that we need much more awareness about what people can do to make sure that their cats aren't having a negative impact. Same if they live in many urban areas as well. That much broader spectrum of cats, from owned indoor cats through to in-betweeners to unowned and feral cats as well, which obviously isn't really a thing with dogs in this country. But for both cats and dogs, it's very much about being aware of what the issues or the potential issues are and being prepared as pet owners to take steps, sensible, pragmatic, reasonable steps to help reduce that risk on our wildlife, whether that's a catio, whether that's keeping them in at dawn and dusk, whether it's keeping your dog on a lead, all the kind of things that we can do to help make sure we're helping our wildlife while enjoying the massive benefit that having a pet brings to us.
I just was going to add, I think that idea of having a cultural shift is actually quite important. I think the way that we look at caring for our cats is very different the way we think about caring for our dogs. Cats are often deemed, when you get a cat, they're so much more independent, they're a bit less work, you don't have to put as much into it because they're just so independent, they do their own thing, all fine. But that's not the case. Like you say, Adam, you spend a lot of time giving your cat enrichment, and because it's an indoor cat, that's something that you have to kind of commit to doing. And that's something that I believe many more people should be doing. And another side of it is not just for me about the wildlife, although that is the main side of why I don't have a cat. The other point is the fact I worry about my cat's safety. My dad had a cat, and when I was a kid, I would go there on the weekends and see little Monty. Loved him to pieces. My nan had a cat, one of the kittens actually that I mentioned earlier, that was unexpectedly born in my university flat. One of the kittens went to my nan, and both of those cats got hit by cars, and only they live quite far back from a main road. So I worry, like, I wouldn't let my dog free roam because I would worry about their safety. I couldn't let my poodles just be like, off you go, have a good day, see you later at dinner time, maybe if you fancy it. I actually worry about the cat's safety these days. Maybe it's my experience by having had, very close encounters with cats that have been killed on the road. I just wouldn't let my dog do it for their own safety. So I struggle wrapping my head around the idea of why would I let my cat do it?
I totally understand that, but are we at a slightly different level of domestication for cats compared to dogs, maybe? Or is that something that is the emphasis, like should it be us that then takes that further, and maybe we need to kind of take that next step as cat owners and go, actually, should we be letting cats out, or can we still give the cat enough of its, can we feed into its natural behaviours enough by keeping it indoors? It's a tough one. I sometimes do feel bad about not letting my cat out, but then I do feel like I do give her enough of that enrichment, but I don't know if everyone does that as cat owners. Do you know what I mean? I think that's a real issue. I think if we're going to kind of push that more and advocate that more, then we need to make sure that people are educated about that enrichment side of things. I mean, Jeff, do you feel like indoor cats can lead a fulfilled life as a cat? Do you feel like they can do that?
Absolutely. I mean, indoor cats can live an absolutely happy, long, fulfilled life. It's different solutions for different cats. And where I might disagree a little bit with Megan is, I don't think it's a case of, a scale of domestication and will eventually turn cats into small dogs, because they're very different beasts in lots of different ways. Where I think there is a really important point of how we develop our understanding of cats is the amount of effort and energy that we put in to having a pet cat. Actually, that point you were making, Megan, around people think cats just look after themselves, we run into all the time as cats protection, particularly in our advocacy work, working with government, where there's whole reams of animal welfare legislation that only apply to dogs and not to cats. And often the first question we get when we walk in is, well, cats just look after themselves, don't they? Like, cat breeding isn't a thing to be concerned about. Kitten smuggling doesn't happen. Actually, it does. So all of these things about making sure that it isn't just a case of lob some food out, they might when they feel like it, and away they go. That isn't right for every cat. So I think it's understanding the range of cats that there are out there and the range of solutions that they need to give them a long, happy and fulfilled life, from the feral to the indoor cat, and everything in between, and making sure that more people understand that owning a cat is, it's a beautiful thing and it brings enormous happiness to millions and millions of people, but it is an important decision. And before anyone takes on any pet, they need to make really sure that they've got the time, the energy to make sure that they can care for it and give that animal what it needs.
I actually think it's quite a good point, that Jeff, because I think it links quite well into what Megan said, because I feel like the more educated we are about owning cats, and the more that they kind of get that even keel with dogs when it comes to legislation and that kind of thing, and attitudes in general, society, governments, that sort of thing, I feel like people would be less likely then to just go, oh, a cat looks after itself. And they won't just let it roam anywhere. You might be more mindful of people might start saying, oh, actually, we'll let our cat out at this time, or only let our cat roam this far, when they realise that it's not just a cat can fend for itself kind of scenario. Megan, did you want to come in on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's very true. We always underestimate the time that our pets take. I mean, in my family, we've got giant rabbits, and they are the most high maintenance animals in the world. But we know that rabbits actually get really mistreated because people put them in hutches, which is a rabbit's worst nightmare. They're highly social animals. They need a lot of space. They need a lot of dietary requirements, lots of different types of vitamins, lots of different types of food. They're very, very high maintenance pets to have. But a lot of people, unfortunately, don't recognise that. And cats are the same in a different way. But I just wanted to correct Jeff on just one thing there. I'm not trying to turn cats into dogs. I'm very aware that dogs with very different behaviours. I'm not trying to turn them into little dogs just because I suggested a leash. I very much respect cats. I like cats. I love big cats. They're my favourite, obviously, natural predators. they're not domesticated. I'm a big fan of non-domesticated animals, as you all know. And I'm not someone that hates on cats. Like I said, I've rescued a few. I'm not trying to turn cats into dogs. So I just wanted to correct that. I'm well aware that they're not dogs.
Of course, no. I would expect a wildlife expert to know the difference, of course, but it's something that people do say quite a lot of the time. Actually, is you get that sense of it is cat's just a small dog and all sorts of reasons. So I totally understand.
Yes.
You weren't saying that, but lots of people do. But it's interesting, Adam, what you were saying, that what you put in is what you get out of the pet, and we know millions of people. There's about 10.6 million cat owners in the UK, and we know that those owners get an enormous benefit from the well-being from their well-being of having a pet cat. The vast majority of them identify and say that they feel that a cat is a member of their family, that they get great joy from having that pet. And I often think that, we know there's kind of, as well as a nature and a climate crisis and a cat welfare crisis, there's a human well-being crisis in our country, and indeed wider at the moment. Two of the things that research again and again tells us that are most important for human well-being are, having a pet gives enormous well-being benefit for people that do that, but also access to nature is something that we know is incredibly important for human well-being. And I can't help think that there is a great way that we can bring these two things together. I mean, you talked about big cats there, Megan. I love big cats as well, but we've got our own, not big, but medium-sized wildcat in the UK as well, which a lot of people necessarily know about. And we've got 10.6 million cat owners. That's a potential army of people that could be championing conservation of our threatened species, whether that's in the UK with our wildcats or indeed big cats across the globe. And there's definitely something there, and I don't feel we've quite grasped that as well as we could do yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of reintroduction of wildcats, I mean, that's not something I'm particularly aware of. I didn't, you kind of see a few videos on social media or whatever, and I'm like, I didn't even know is that in the UK? So, I mean, yeah, can you guys expand on that a little bit more?
Very lucky. I've for the last, I've just moved out, but for the last 3 or so years, I've been living up in the Cairngorms National Park, right around the corner from the Saving Wildcats project. It's an amazing group of people that are focused on re-establishing Scottish wildcats. And unfortunately, this is a species which has declined significantly to the point where actually finding a full 100% genetic Scottish wildcat is near impossible. There's been a lot of hybridization with domestic cats. So most wildcats have some sort of genetics from domestic cats, as they're, again, free roaming, they meet each other and breed. And hybridization has been a really big problem for Scottish wildcat, as has habitat destruction, habitat loss. I never like using habitat loss because it infers that we've misplaced it. We haven't misplaced the habitat, unfortunately. We've cut it all down and burnt it all or made furniture out of it. Because of the lack of the Caledonian woodland, Caledonian forest up in northern Scotland, and the way that we intensively manage the land, unfortunately the species has had no place to go. And then, of course, with the interaction with domestic cats, it's been a big problem. But there are many great people that are working to promote and conserve Scottish wildcats, reinstate them, support them, and kind of work on reintroducing this long missing species that's really valuable for our ecosystem. And they've done a couple of releases, and it's really exciting to see. And so far, it's going pretty well, I think.
Fingers crossed. And part of that group now is Cats Protection. Very recently, hot off the press, we've now signed up to be formal partners in the Saving Wildcats project, which is brilliant because, as Megan says, one of the major threats facing wildcats is hybridization with domestic cats. So we have people on the ground. Big shout out to our Strathspey and our Deeside branches, putting a huge amount of effort in to trapping, neutering and vaccinating domestic and cats in that Cairngorms landscape to help reduce that threat to wildcats. And the chance to bring back the Highland tiger, one of our most threatened mammals in the UK, I think is incredibly exciting. And if people go to the area, not surprisingly, looking for a cat in the Cairngorms is a bit of a struggle. They're difficult to see, but I think there's something amazing about just walking through that landscape and knowing they're there. there's something about that, isn't there, Megan? Even if you don't see the wildcat, it's just knowing they're there somewhere in the forest, they could be watching you. It's just such a completely different experience from walking through some of our, unfortunately, very sterilised that we have in other areas of the UK.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Translocations like this are always great because it feels like you're taking kind of a step forward in nature conservation, and you have these kind of topics more openly about reintroductions. So yeah, it's a good step forward for sure. It's a bit of a long way to go with Scottish wildcats, but it's a step in the right direction with them for sure.
I mean, I suppose a good way to round this off really is just getting a final few words from both of you guys. It is quite an emotive subject as well, because it's very hard to kind of pin it down to, you can't really summarize it in a few sentences because there's so many variables within the subject, I suppose. And there's no one size fits all answer. But Megan, if there's anything that people can do as cat owners, even to make a small difference, in your opinion, what would it be?
I think just educate and be aware. Nobody is having this conversation to attack cats. And I think, so much of this kind of topic has been really polarized and very, hard. People feel like they're coming for your cat and you feel like you're coming for the birds, and it's one way or the other. But actually what we need to do is having these kind of conversations, growing aware of both sides of this discussion. But I'd ask of cat owners just to really kind of do some research into it and think about what could be the right solution for your cat. Are you somebody that loves the birds in your garden? Are you somebody that likes to go for walks in green spaces and appreciates nature? I imagine if you have a cat, you probably are. But really think effectively about how you can kind of look after your cat, perhaps provide more enrichment, perhaps look into catios, do different things like that can limit your cat's impact. And just because you're not seeing them hunting doesn't mean they're not doing it. That's the key one for me.
And Jeff, I imagine you agree with a majority of that. Is there anything else you'd like to add that people can be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that introduction, as in there. Like, this is a really difficult thing to wrap up in a couple of sentences. Megan and Jeff, go wrap it up in a couple of sentences.
No pressure.
Nice little hospital pass there. I'd agree with everything Megan says. For me, it's that awareness and understanding. Be aware that cats are amazing and bring huge benefit to all of us that have them as pets. We all love them, but they are small predators. That's often what makes them so amazing, or one of the factors, certainly. So be aware, take the time to find out about what wildlife is in your local area. Wherever you are, there will be local green spaces, a local wildlife trust, a local nature reserve. Find out about what's out there, because actually things you can do in how you look after your cat would help reduce the risk and help make sure you're not having an undue negative impact on nature. But also, as individuals, getting out there in the countryside, seeing wildlife is a brilliant thing for our own health and well-being as well. So do you know what? Get out, enjoy it as well. And you might just find, as well as cat ownership, there's another thing that can have a huge benefit for you as a person as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I think we've kind of reached a quite a nice consensus there as well between us. I think it's something that we can all agree on. And also, I think for, cat owners in general, there's tons of advice there that people can be, kind of getting on with, because it's genuinely something we do kind of hear time and time again, people asking questions about it and, looking for ways that they can, suppose, help in a lot of ways. And it's also something that people really want to be able to take into their own kind of, the way that they look after their cat, I suppose. So, I mean, that's probably quite a good place for us to leave the discussion today. Thanks both for taking the time. It's honestly been amazing, fascinating. We've learned a lot. And if you've enjoyed that discussion, you have any thoughts on wildlife conservation or your cat's predatory behaviour, don't forget you can get in touch. Let us know. Big thank you to you, Megan, for taking the time to speak to us cat people today. We appreciate you coming on.
No problem. Happy to help.
Yeah. What's next for you then?
Oh, I'm busy writing at the moment. So I've just got in from filming a long filming day yesterday, and I've got a week ahead of writing at my laptop, which actually I'm looking forward to because it means I get to be at home.
Very nice. And Jeff Knott as well, thank you for taking part in this special edition of Cat's Got Your Tongue. What's next for you?
Oh, well, straight back to work, and no doubt meeting sitting in front of the laptop today, but hopefully I'll get a chance to get out in lovely spring weather sooner rather than later.
Nice. I love it. Brilliant. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks. Appreciate your time.
No problem.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Adam.
Adam.
So that is it for this time. Cat's Got Your Tongue is made in association with the charity Cats Protection, and thank you for listening. Remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts, or you can watch us on YouTube as well. And don't forget, if you've got any cat's tales to be featured in a future episode, it can be questions, funny stories, or just pretty much anything cat related at all. You can get in touch by emailing pod@cats.org.uk, or you can leave us a little voice note on WhatsApp if you want on 07824 55 1076. Don't forget, tell your friends with cats about us, share the podcast, give us a review, and we'll see you next time on Cat's Got Your Tongue. Cats Protection is making a better life for cats because life is better with cats. The charity helps over 500 cats a day, whether that's through rehoming, neutering, or offering valuable cat behaviour and welfare advice to owners. If you'd like to make a donation towards helping more cats and kittens in the UK, visit cats.org.uk/donate.